You think pain only weakens you, but it quietly edits your identity. You believe comfort protects you from darkness, yet it secretly keeps your mind fragile. What if the worst moments you survived were the only real training you had? Every mind carries a hidden rule: avoid pain at any cost, protect comfort at any cost. This rule sounds reasonable, yet it is the exact rule that keeps you breakable. When you refuse suffering, you also refuse the growth that only suffering can unlock. Pain is not only a feeling, it is a sculptor of perception and choices. Every time you suffer, something inside either cracks or hardens, depending on how you respond. If you simply escape, the crack stays open, and anyone can press it later. Dark psychology begins from this point. Pain is not random, it is a control axis. Whoever understands your relationship with suffering understands how to move you without effort. If you fear emotional pain, rejection becomes the perfect weapon against you. If you fear failure, small threats to your status control your entire nervous system. If you fear loneliness, silent withdrawal from others becomes a powerful, invisible chain. So the real question is not whether you suffer, but what your suffering teaches you. There is a line many repeat: suffering is a crown that burns and teaches. The weak reject the crown. They want safety more than truth, comfort more than strength. The strong accept that the crown burns, yet they let it sit on their mind. Wisdom is rarely born in easy moments. It grows in pressure, confusion, and inner storms. When you are pushed to your limit, you see which beliefs actually survive the impact. False beliefs break quickly, real principles stay, even when everything else feels destroyed. If you pay close attention, you will notice something important about people who endured deep suffering. Their emotions are still human, but their reactions have a strange calm and delay. They do not respond instantly, because they have already met worse storms inside themselves. This delay is a hidden weapon. It looks like silence, but it is calculation. They are not cold, they are simply not ruled by the first impulse anymore. Impulse once controlled them in the past, and they paid for it with heavy pain. Dark psychology uses impulse as the main doorway. Fast reactions are easy reactions to control. If someone can make you instantly angry, they can redirect your decisions while you burn. If someone can make you instantly afraid, they can shape your choices while you freeze. Suffering, when processed with awareness, removes this doorway. You stop reacting like a raw nerve. You start carrying a quiet sentence in your mind: I have felt worse and survived. This sentence is not ego, it is a record of your private history with pain. From this record, a new perception grows. You stop asking why this is happening to you. Instead, you ask, what exactly is this pressure trying to push me into choosing? That question changes everything, because your focus moves from emotion to pattern. There is another quiet line worth remembering: pain is a tutor that repeats lessons until learned. Every repeated emotional pattern is a lesson you refused to understand earlier. You kept choosing comfort, so life kept raising the volume of the same test. When you finally sit with the suffering and dissect it, something sharp happens inside. You start seeing where you gave others too much power over your state. You notice how often you begged for acceptance, attention, or validation without using those words. This realization stings, yet this sting is the beginning of psychological armor. You see that your neediness was the open door where dark influence entered. From that point forward, you begin a different rule: I can feel pain without collapsing. Once this rule is accepted deeply, your nervous system receives a new message about survival. It realizes that emotional discomfort is not death, it is data about your environment. Data can be studied, reorganized, and turned into strategy instead of panic. Now your mind resembles an inner council, not a screaming crowd demanding relief. One part feels the pain, another part observes it, a third part decides the response. This internal distance may look cold from outside, yet inside it feels like ordered strength. Dark psychology loses many tools against a person with this structure. Guilt no longer controls them easily, because they can examine the guilt before obeying it. Shame no longer paralyzes them completely, because they can trace who benefits from that shame. They can still be hurt, but they are not easily steered, and that difference is everything. Their suffering did not remove emotions. It organized them like disciplined soldiers under a clear command. When they feel fear, they ask why now, and who gains if I bow to this? You can reach this state only through friction, not through motivational comfort or repeated positive phrases. The mind respects what was earned under pressure, not what was whispered during safe moments. So your past pain becomes a treasury if you extract its lessons instead of only its scars. This is why those who embrace necessary suffering appear unbreakable to others. They are not stronger because life was kind. They are stronger because it was not. Their quiet authority comes from every moment they stayed, standing inside when they wanted to disappear. But there is a darker side to this transformation that most people never question. Once you become calm under pain, you also gain the power to endure injustice silently. And if you are not careful, that same strength can be used to keep you obedient. So the next secret is not only how to suffer wisely, but how to refuse weaponized suffering without losing your unbreakable calm. Are you ready to see that difference inside your own life? You think calm under pressure means victory, but calm can also hide manipulation. You believe silence proves strength, yet silence can trap you if misused by others. What if the same endurance that protects you also makes you easier to control? When you learn to survive suffering, your mind enters a rare state. Pressure no longer breaks you quickly, hardship no longer scares you instantly. But this new stability can create a blind spot. You stop noticing slow psychological traps. Every manipulator studies two things before acting: what you avoid and what you can tolerate. If you tolerate pain easily, they will not attack you loudly, they will attack you quietly. They begin controlling your environment slowly, instead of attacking your emotions directly. You endured storms before, so a light discomfort feels harmless. You endured deep hurt before, so a small pressure feels manageable. This creates a perfect doorway for subtle influence to enter without resistance. The mind that has suffered deeply develops high thresholds, but thresholds can be exploited. When small manipulations feel too small to matter, they slip into your routine unnoticed. A delayed reply here, a subtle dismissal there, a quiet guilt pattern somewhere else. Each tiny pattern is weak, but together they begin shaping your reactions. You tell yourself you are simply being patient, rational, or understanding. But slowly your emotional calibration shifts, and you do not realize who shifted it. There is an old line worth remembering: strength without awareness becomes a silent cage. You can endure the pain, but do you notice who is creating the pressure and why? If you do not question this early, your endurance becomes a leash instead of a shield. Dark psychology thrives on this exact weakness: strong people who stop questioning small things. They think small discomfort cannot move them, so they let it pass again and again. Manipulators know this, so they do not push you hard, they push you often. A person who suffered once in a massive way becomes resistant to obvious attacks. But they become strangely vulnerable to slow emotional erosion. Erosion works by repetition, not intensity, and repetition is invisible until too late. Your ability to remain calm becomes a predictable habit. Predictable habits can be mapped, anticipated, and used against you. When someone knows your calm is guaranteed, they can keep you waiting, apologizing, or adjusting. You tell yourself you are simply choosing peace, but peace without boundaries is surrender. You tell yourself you are avoiding unnecessary conflict, but avoidance becomes obedience over time. Your strong mind begins bending not from fear, but from excessive endurance. This shift happens quietly inside, and you do not hear the change. Your tolerance becomes bigger than your self-respect. Your patience becomes bigger than your emotional safety. This is a dangerous calibration because it looks like maturity. But maturity without limits becomes exhaustion disguised as discipline. You feel proud of your composure, yet drained after every interaction. Many people with high emotional resilience fall into this cycle. They train themselves to endure, but never train themselves to recognize misuse of endurance. They accept pressure as part of life, but forget that not all pressure is natural. So the real transformation begins when you add awareness to your endurance. You start asking a silent question. Why am I expected to tolerate this pattern repeatedly? This question illuminates motives behind the pressure, instead of only the pressure itself. Once you pair awareness with endurance, your calm stops being predictable. Your responses become intentional instead of habitual. Your silence becomes a choice instead of a default reaction. This is where your resilience turns into controlled intelligence. You no longer absorb every discomfort without evaluating it. You no longer confuse patience with loyalty or understanding with submission. Your mind begins reorganizing the map of influence. You see pressures as signals. Some signals deserve attention, some deserve distance, some deserve complete removal. You stop accepting the idea that staying strong means staying present in every situation. You recognize that unnecessary suffering is not a lesson, it is a manipulation disguised as growth. You learn to separate purposeful discomfort from pointless erosion. This separation becomes a psychological filter protecting your decisions. A quiet line sits inside this understanding. The wise endure storms, but never sleep inside them. Strength is not staying in pain. Strength is knowing when the pain is no longer teaching. This distinction changes your entire emotional architecture. But there is a deeper shift that comes next, and it is even more unsettling. Once you master endurance and awareness together, you gain something rare and powerful. You become emotionally unpredictable, and unpredictability creates a silent authority most people cannot handle. But this authority carries its own shadow. Can you hold power without becoming distant from everyone around you? You think emotional distance protects you, but distance can slowly disconnect your inner truth. You believe unpredictability gives you power, yet unpredictability can also make you misread yourself. What if becoming unbreakable requires balance, not just strength and silence? When the mind learns to endure suffering and observe patterns clearly, it gains a new layer of control. You stop reacting automatically, you stop giving instant emotional signals, you stop revealing your inner state. This creates a unique psychological advantage. People cannot predict your responses easily. In dark psychology, unpredictability is a shield, because predictable people are controllable people. When someone can guess your fear, they can feed it. When someone can guess your need, they can withhold it. But once you become difficult to read, something interesting happens. People with manipulative tendencies lose their leverage. They cannot use emotional shortcuts to guide your behavior. Your silence becomes a mirror. It reflects their intentions more than your reactions. Your pauses create a small anxiety in them because they no longer know what you think. Your calmness forces them to reveal more than they planned. Yet here is the hidden danger. Emotional distance can start controlling you instead of protecting you. Distance becomes addictive because it feels safe and powerful. You start using it even when it is not needed, even when connection is harmless. This is where the mind enters a paradox created by long suffering. You want peace, but you also want protection. So you build a barrier so strong that even harmless people cannot enter it fully. Your unpredictability stops being a tool and becomes an identity. Instead of choosing when to be open or closed, you stay closed by default. And slowly you stop recognizing when you are isolating your own emotional needs. There is an old line many forget. Courage is not the absence of pain. Courage is the return to feeling after pain. Strength is not distancing from all emotions. Strength is controlling which emotions deserve space inside you. Without this control, even wisdom becomes rigid. The mind that avoids harm through silence may also avoid growth through connection. You stop trusting not because others failed you, but because you fear your previous pain repeating. So your silence becomes a shield that never leaves your hand. Dark psychology calls this the armor paradox. The armor that protects you in battle becomes the weight that slows you in peace. You cannot move freely while carrying it everywhere. This paradox makes many strong minds emotionally mechanical. They feel deeply but express nothing. They understand people but reveal nothing. And manipulators know how to use this. They can provoke you by calling you cold or distant. They can frame your silence as guilt, irresponsibility, or emotional failure. If you are not aware, you begin defending yourself instead of defending your boundaries. You explain your silence, and explanations become another form of vulnerability. You reveal the very emotions you were trying to protect. This is why balance becomes essential at this stage. Unpredictability works only when it is intentional, not constant. Distance protects only when you choose it, not when it becomes your automatic position. So a new internal rule is required, one that separates healthy silence from defensive silence. This rule begins with a question: am I being quiet because it is wise or because I am afraid? This question exposes the motive behind your calmness. When your calm comes from wisdom, it feels like space. When your calm comes from fear, it feels like tension. Your body knows the difference even before your thoughts do. Your suffering may have taught you to protect yourself, but it must also teach you when protection is no longer needed. A mind that never reopens is a mind still ruled by its past. A mind that knows when to reopen becomes emotionally sovereign. In this sovereignty, unpredictability stops being a shield and becomes a strategy. You choose when to reveal, when to conceal, when to be silent, and when to speak. Your silence carries intention, not fear. But mastering this balance leads to an even deeper psychological shift. You gain a rare inner stillness, and stillness changes your relationship with power itself. And this change creates the next hidden danger. Can your inner stillness survive when others try to pull you into their emotional chaos? You think staying centered keeps you above chaos, but chaos adapts when it cannot move you. You believe inner stillness protects your mind, yet stillness can become a target for those who hate control they cannot access. What if the more calm you become, the more emotional storms others try to drag you into? Once your suffering reshapes your emotional system, you stop reacting to noise. Shouting does not shake you, guilt does not trap you, emotional pressure does not bend you quickly. Your mind becomes a quiet ground where external storms cannot reach easily. This inner stillness is rare, and people who lack it sense something different about you. Some feel inspired, some feel threatened, and some feel desperate to test your limits. Testing begins with emotional invitations designed to break your balance. Dark psychology explains something uncomfortable. Not every emotional storm is accidental. Some storms are constructed to force a reaction from you. If you react, you reveal your weak points. If you stay calm, you expose theirs. When you do not react, manipulators experience a strange frustration. They rely on emotional turbulence to pull others into their control pattern. Your stillness disrupts their script, and anything that breaks their script becomes a threat. So they try a different method. They attempt emotional chaos through confusion. Confusion is a soft weapon. It twists meaning, bends context, and shifts clarity. Its goal is simple. If you cannot be shaken by pain, you might be shaken by uncertainty. Uncertainty works slowly, but it works deeply. A small contradiction here, an unclear statement there, a half-truth delivered at the right moment. These tiny distortions can push even strong minds into self-doubt. This is where inner stillness becomes fragile. If your calm is based only on emotional discipline, confusion can make cracks. If your calm is based on clarity, confusion loses its power. So you must evolve your stillness from emotional control into cognitive sharpness. Emotional control keeps you stable, but cognitive sharpness keeps you untangled. This shift is essential, because chaos cannot pull in a mind that sees the structure behind the chaos. You begin noticing how confusion is built, not how it feels. You see the intention behind the inconsistent behavior. You recognize when meaning is being twisted to disorient your sense of direction. A quiet line captures this stage well. Clarity is armor sharpened from pain. When you suffered, you learned to stabilize yourself. Now you learn to read patterns that try to destabilize you. You realize something important. Emotional chaos often hides logical patterns. The moment you detect the pattern, the chaos loses its hypnotic pull. Your stillness becomes rooted in understanding, not suppression. This understanding creates a psychological presence others cannot handle easily. You no longer get dragged into raising your voice or defending your innocence. You observe, you question, you wait, and waiting becomes a strategic weapon. Your silence is no longer a pause, it becomes a spotlight. People reveal themselves when they talk into a silence they cannot read. Their motives leak through the gaps, their intentions slip into their words. But this level of insight introduces a deeper challenge. Once you see through emotional chaos, you also start seeing through people. And seeing too much can either liberate you or isolate you completely. Your mind begins recognizing patterns before conversations finish. You notice when someone speaks from insecurity, desire, fear, or ego. You sense their emotional agenda before they consciously admit it. This awareness is powerful, but it comes with a cost. The more you see, the less noise you can tolerate. The more truth you detect, the harder it becomes to engage in superficial interactions. Your stillness becomes a filter that only a few people can pass through. And this creates a new internal question. Are you becoming wise or just emotionally detached? Wisdom observes, but detachment disconnects, and the difference is razor thin. The next transformation requires answering a deeper question. How do you remain unbreakable without losing your ability to connect with the world? Can you hold clarity without closing your heart to everything unclear? You think clarity always protects your heart, but clarity can also harden it. You believe truth makes you stronger, yet truth can quietly drain your ability to feel. What if seeing too deeply into others begins to blur your connection with yourself? When you reach the stage where confusion cannot shake you, a new layer awakens inside. Your mind becomes sharper than before, reading motives beneath words and intentions beneath actions. You sense emotional currents others do not even notice exist around them. This awareness feels like a gift, yet every gift carries a shadow. The shadow appears when your mind starts predicting behaviors too accurately. You begin seeing relationships as patterns, not as experiences. Dark psychology warns about this subtle shift. When you analyze people more than you connect with them, you lose emotional presence. You feel safe but strangely isolated, protected but strangely empty. Your suffering gave you armor, your clarity gave you vision, but vision without emotional gravity creates distance. You stop trusting easily because you see inconsistencies before others notice them. You stop opening up because you see the possibility of disappointment before it appears. This is where the mind silently replaces connection with calculation. Calculation is useful, but it has a price. It keeps you above life instead of inside it. Slowly, your emotional spectrum narrows, not because you feel less, but because you share less. There is a quiet line many forget. Insight without softness becomes a blade with no balance. You see the truth, but the truth becomes harsh. You feel the patterns, but the patterns replace empathy. This stage can trick even strong minds. They mistake emotional withdrawal for emotional power. They confuse distance with intelligence and predictability with wisdom. But endurance, awareness, and clarity were never meant to remove your emotional depth. They were meant to refine it, not dissolve it. You are supposed to feel more safely, not feel less entirely. So a new calibration is needed here. You must learn to let your insight guide you without letting it isolate you. You must learn to protect your inner self without locking it behind permanent walls. This balance begins when you stop seeing your sensitivity as danger. Pain taught you to guard it, but wisdom teaches you to use it. Sensitivity becomes strength when it is controlled, not hidden. To regain emotional gravity, you must create internal space for genuine feeling again. This does not mean trusting blindly or exposing yourself to harm. It means recognizing that not every connection demands caution. Your insight becomes a filter, not a cage. Your clarity becomes guidance, not avoidance. Your stillness becomes acceptance, not shutdown. And something interesting happens once this shift begins. You start choosing connections with intention instead of fear. You allow certain people closer without losing your boundaries. Your emotional presence becomes steady, not reactive. Your emotional decisions become conscious, not defensive. Your emotional world becomes selective, not empty. This is the stage where you become quietly magnetic. Your calm no longer feels cold, it feels grounded. Your silence no longer feels distant, it feels wise. People feel safe around you because you are not controlled by invisible wounds. Your past suffering becomes a compass instead of a prison. Your clarity empowers your empathy instead of replacing it. Yet there is a final transformation waiting, and it is the most difficult one. Once you restore emotional presence without losing psychological strength, you face a deeper question. Can you use your suffering not only to protect yourself, but to guide your entire life with purpose? This final step turns inner strength into inner authority. But inner authority carries one last hidden danger. What happens when you become so unbreakable that nothing external shapes you anymore? You think nothing can touch you now, but untouched minds face a different danger. You believe becoming unbreakable means absolute safety, yet absolute safety can quietly erase direction. What if strength without purpose becomes the heaviest burden a mind can carry? Once you reach the stage where suffering has reshaped your inner world, something rare forms inside you. Your emotions respond slowly, your mind observes sharply, your decisions come from clarity, not fear. You no longer collapse under pressure, you no longer bend from guilt, you no longer chase validation. This is the state many dream of but few reach, the state of inner neutrality. Neutrality is not indifference, it is the ability to stay steady even when the world shifts. It is a calm that no argument, rejection, or pressure can easily disturb. But neutrality without purpose becomes directionless. When external chaos no longer affects you, you stop noticing which path pulls your inner gravity. You feel stable, but stability without movement becomes stagnation. Dark psychology explains a subtle truth here. Once a person becomes unbreakable internally, life stops shaping them. They must begin shaping their life intentionally, or they drift silently into emotional emptiness. The world no longer moves them, so they must choose what moves them. This is where purpose becomes essential. Purpose gives the unbreakable mind something to serve beyond its own strength. It prevents emotional numbness from turning into spiritual silence. Purpose does not have to be loud, grand, or heroic. Purpose can be simple, a value, a principle, a personal line you refuse to cross. Something that gives direction to your stillness and focus to your clarity. When purpose enters the unbreakable mind, everything aligns. Your suffering becomes a teacher, not a memory. Your clarity becomes guidance, not detachment. Your endurance becomes fuel, not armor. A quiet line reminds you of this stage. Strength without direction is weight, but strength with direction is destiny. Your past pain transforms from burden into blueprint. You understand why you survived what you survived, and what it prepared you to become. You stop asking why hardship happened to you. You start asking what this resilience is meant to build next. Your unbreakability becomes a foundation, not a shield. You no longer hide behind emotional walls because you no longer fear collapse. You no longer tolerate erosion because you know the shape of your inner worth. You no longer confuse isolation with strength because you can remain open without losing stability. This is the final transformation of suffering. It does not make you cold, it makes you conscious. It does not make you distant, it makes you selective. It does not make you fragile, it makes you sovereign. And sovereignty carries one final question, a question only you can answer. Now that nothing external can break you, what internal truth are you finally ready to build your life around?